On a crisp autumn afternoon, Daniel Whitmore sat motionless on a weathered bench in Brookside Park, his eyes fixed on the empty playground where children's laughter should have been. The tailored lines of his expensive suit suggested a man who had everything, but the hollow ache in his chest told another story. Just a year earlier, Daniel had lost his wife, Emily, to a relentless battle with cancer. They had spent years dreaming of a family, only to be told they could never have children of their own. When Emily passed, it felt as though not only his partner was gone, but also the future they had so carefully imagined together. At 42, Daniel was a real estate magnate with properties across the country and a net worth that made him a force in every boardroom. Yet the fortune he had built, the empire he commanded, meant nothing in the echoing silence of his mansion. The halls, once filled with the hope of little footsteps, now felt like the cold corridors of a tomb. For months, he returned to the same bench every afternoon, searching for something he couldn't quite name. Grief had become his shadow, and solitude his only constant companion. In the stillness of that park, surrounded by strangers yet entirely alone, Daniel wondered if the rest of his life would be defined by absence, until an unexpected voice would one day break through the silence. Late one golden afternoon, as Daniel Whitmore sat in his usual spot in Brookside Park, the air was heavy with the kind of stillness that had defined his life for the past year. His gaze lingered on the swings, gently swaying in the breeze, without the weight of small bodies and laughter to fill the air. He was so lost in his thoughts that the sound of a small, tentative voice startled him. "Excuse me, mister. Can I sit here? My legs hurt." Daniel turned his head and saw a little girl, no more than 8 years old, standing beside the cumbed bench. Her brown eyes were tired but alert, framed by neat braids tied with faded ribbons. Her school uniform was clean but worn, and the backpack she carried looked far too heavy for her small frame. She had the kind of quiet dignity that made him instantly curious, and a wave of something unfamiliar stirred in him. "Of course, sweetheart. Please sit," Daniel said, shifting to give her space. The girl dropped onto the bench with a soft sigh of relief that sounded far too practiced for someone so young. "I've been walking for a long time," she explained matter-of-factly. "Mama says the bus costs too much for just me, so I walk home from school every day. It's not far, but my shoes have holes, and my feet get sore." Daniel felt something shift in his chest, a sharp crack in the wall of grief he'd built. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "I'm Lily Carter," she replied with a small smile. "Mama named me after a lady in a book she liked. She says smart names make you smart too." "What's your name, mister?" "Daniel," he said. "It's nice to meet you, Lily. Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She is," Lily said proudly. "She works at the hotel during the day and washes dishes at a proudly restaurant at night. She works hard so I can have a better life than she did. But sometimes I wish she didn't work so much, 'cause I miss her." Her honesty hit Daniel with the force of a memory, late-night talks he and Emily had once imagined having with their own child. For the first time in months, instead of jealousy or sorrow at the sight of children playing, he felt something lighter, something he hadn't recognized in a long time. "Hope. Do you have kids, Mr. Daniel?" she asked, tilting her head. The question should have hurt, but instead it felt like an invitation. "No, I don't," he admitted softly. "But I always wanted them." "You'd be a good daddy," Lily said with the casual certainty only children possess. "You have kind eyes. Mama says you can tell a lot about someone from their eyes." Daniel felt an unfamiliar warmth rising in his chest. "Thank you, Lily. That's one of the nicest things anyone has ever said to me." "It's just true," she shrugged. "You look lonely, but not mean lonely. Just the kind that wishes for someone to talk to. I saw you here before, you know. Lots of times. You always sit here looking at the playground like you wish you could play too." Daniel was stunned at her perception. "You're very observant. How did you know I come here every day?" "Because I pass by every day walking home. And you're always here." She swung her legs idly. "Today I was so tired I decided to ask if I could sit. I thought maybe we could both feel better if we talked." He chuckled softly. "Well, I'm glad you did. You've made me feel better than I have in a long time. Mama says that's what people should do, make each other feel better. She says there's already enough sadness in the world." As the sun dipped lower, casting warm shades of orange and pink, Daniel realized he didn't want the conversation to end. Lily, would it be okay if I sat here again tomorrow when you walk by? Maybe we can talk some more. Her eyes lit up with unfiltered joy. Really? You want to be my friend? I'd be honored, Daniel said. That would be so great. I don't have many friends. I have to come straight home after school to do homework before Mama gets back from her first job. But if you're here, I could stop for a little while. Maybe you won't be so lonely, and I won't feel so tired from walking. As she gathered her heavy backpack and started down the path, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced since Emily's death, a flicker of excitement about tomorrow. The bench, once a monument to his grief, now felt like a place where something new could grow. The next afternoon, Daniel arrived early, carrying a small bag of healthy snacks he'd picked just up for her long walk home. When Lily appeared, her face brightened at the sight of him. "You came back," she exclaimed. "I promised, didn't I?" Daniel replied, standing to help her with her bag. They sat and talked. About her day at school, about butterflies, and how they transform, about her dreams to become a teacher or a doctor so she could help people. And with each word, Daniel felt the heaviness in his heart lifting, replaced by something fragile but steady, the feeling that maybe, just maybe, his life still had room for joy. What he didn't yet know was that this simple friendship, born from a tired girl's request to rest her legs, would become the seed of something extraordinary. In that park, on that bench, hope had quietly returned to a man who thought he'd never feel it again. Over the next several weeks, Daniel Whitmore found himself structuring his days around a very specific hour, the moment Lily Carter would appear on the path through Brookside Park, her small frame weighed down by her backpack, and her easy smile ready to greet him. At first, he told himself it was a harmless habit, simply a way to pass the late afternoons, without sinking into the solitude that had gripped him since Emily's death. But with each meeting, their conversations deepened, and Daniel began to realize that this was no longer just about easing his own loneliness, it was about being there for her, too. Every day, he came prepared. Sometimes it was a bottle of cold water and a container of fresh fruit salad. Other days, it might be trail mix, a granola bar, or a paperback book he thought she'd enjoy. Lily always accepted the offerings with a mix of gratitude and careful politeness, explaining that her mother had taught her not to take things from strangers unless she could give something in return. Daniel always told her the same thing. "You've already given me something, your company. That's worth more than anything I could bring." It wasn't long before he learned more about her life. Her mother, Rachel Carter, was a single parent working 2 jobs, cleaning rooms at a hotel by day and washing dishes at a restaurant by night, while also taking online classes to finish her nursing degree. Rachel's schedule left her little time at home, and though she tried to be there for Lily as much as possible, the hours she spent away were necessary just to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. Lily spoke of her mother with an admiration far beyond her years. She told Daniel about how Rachel sang while she cooked, even when she was exhausted, and how she insisted on reading to Lily every night, no matter how late she came home. She explained how her mother taught her to count change at the grocery store, to look people in the eye when she spoke, and to always leave a place better than you found it. Daniel listened to every word, quietly awed by the resilience and warmth of this woman he had yet to meet. Gradually, his admiration for Lily's mother grew alongside his affection for the girl herself. He was struck by how much love and wisdom Rachel had poured into her daughter despite the relentless demands of her life. And he was equally struck by Lily's ability to find joy in the smallest things, a butterfly landing nearby, a story she was reading at school, the rare nights when her mother came home early enough for them to eat dinner together. One afternoon, after Lily mentioned that she usually made her own dinner, a sandwich or cereal before finishing her homework alone, Daniel felt a pang of protectiveness so strong. It startled him. "Lily," he said carefully, "would it be all right if I brought you dinner? Sometime? Something warm, so you don't have to eat by yourself." She hesitated, chewing her lip. "Mama might not like that. She's careful about people we don't know too well. She says some people give things because they want something back." Daniel nodded, respecting the boundary. "Your mother sounds smart. What if I met her first? That way she could decide if it's okay. I'd like to thank her for raising someone as wonderful as you." Lily's face brightened, but she still looked cautious. "Maybe. She works all the time, though. The only time she's not working is Saturday afternoons. She usually does laundry and groceries then, but maybe she could come to the park for a little while." "Saturday it is," Daniel said with a smile. If she agrees, of course. That week, Daniel found himself more nervous than he'd been in years. He wasn't sure why. The idea of meeting Rachel Carter made his palms sweat. Perhaps it was because he wanted her to see that he wasn't some fleeting figure in Lily's life, he was someone who genuinely cared. He hoped Rachel would understand that his intentions weren't about charity, pity, or trying to save them. They were about connection. When Saturday arrived, Daniel got to the park early, as usual. He had dressed simply. Dark jeans, a light sweater, careful not to appear intimidating. At exactly 3 o'clock, Lily appeared on the path, her smile wide as ever. Beside her walked a tall, graceful woman with the same warm brown eyes, though Rachel's held a layer of weariness and guarded strength. "That's him, Mama." "That's Mr. Daniel," Lily said, pointing toward the bench. Rachel's steps slowed. She took in his appearance, her eyes flicking over the polished shoes, the well-cut clothes, the careful posture. Daniel could almost see the moment her maternal instincts went into high alert. She stopped a few feet away. "Lily, wait here a minute," she said softly but firmly. "I want to talk to Mr. Daniel alone." Daniel stood as she approached, offering his hand. "Rachel Carter, I assume. It's nice to finally meet you. Lily talks about you all the time." Rachel's handshake was brief but firm. "She talks about you, too. I'd like to know why a man, like you, is so interested in my 8-year-old daughter." Her directness didn't surprise him. If anything, it made him respect her more. "I understand your concern," Daniel said. "The truth is, I've been going through a very difficult time, and your daughter's friendship has meant more to me than I can express. She's reminded me there's still light in the world." Rachel's expression softened slightly, though her guard didn't drop. "That's a lot of responsibility to put on a child's shoulders." "I don't put it on her," Daniel replied. "She offered it freely, just by being herself." They spoke for several more minutes, Rachel probing with cautious but fair questions. Daniel answering with as much honesty as he could. Slowly, the tension in her shoulders eased. By the time Lily rejoined them, Rachel still didn't look entirely convinced, but there was no outright refusal in her eyes. "You can keep talking to her here in the park," she said finally. "But I expect to know about it. And if I hear about anything that makes me uneasy, it stops." "Understood?" "Understood," Daniel said. "I wouldn't want it any other way." As the three of them sat together for the first time, Daniel felt something shift, a sense that this wasn't just a chance encounter anymore. It was the beginning of something deeper, a bridge being built between a lonely man, a cautious mother, and a bright little girl who had unknowingly drawn them into each other's lives. And though he couldn't have predicted it then, that afternoon in the park was the first step toward a bond that would grow strong enough to be called family. From the moment Rachel Carter agreed to let Daniel Whitmore continue seeing her daughter, he made it his mission to prove that her trust was not misplaced. He understood that a single mother's caution wasn't born of paranoia, but of hard experience. If he wanted to be part of Lily's life, he had to show that his presence came with no strings attached, no hidden motives, no fleeting curiosity. He started simply. Every afternoon, he met Lily at the park, walking her home while carrying her heavy backpack and listening to her chatter about school. He never missed a day, even in the rain. Soon, Rachel began to notice the difference in her daughter. Lily came home smiling more, her conversations livelier, her energy brighter. One Saturday, Rachel reluctantly agreed to Daniel's suggestion that they all spend the day at the city zoo. She took the day off from her restaurant shift, though Daniel quietly arranged to cover the wages she would lose. He never mentioned it. Rachel only found out later, and by then she had begun to realize that his help was never meant to make her feel indebted, only supported. At the zoo, Daniel was like a child himself, kneeling beside Lily at the penguin enclosure, pointing out the way the birds glided through the water. When she wanted to see elephants, he didn't just lead her there. He found a zookeeper who could answer her endless questions. Rachel, watching from a short distance, saw the way Daniel's attention never wavered from her daughter. He anticipated Lily's needs without smothering her, let her lead the day's adventures, and made sure she knew she was the most important person in the room. Or in this case, the zoo. The outings became more frequent. There were afternoons at the Science Museum, where Daniel bought a year-long family membership so Lily could return anytime. Evenings where he helped with her math homework, while Rachel cooked dinner, their small apartment filled with the sound of conversation and laughter. Rachel found herself talking to Daniel more, too, About her nursing classes. About her worries over bills. About the fatigue that came from working 2 jobs. Daniel didn't just listen, he acted. He offered to help with tuition so Rachel could cut back her hours and focus on finishing her nursing degree sooner. When she hesitated, he reminded her. It wasn't charity, it was an investment in their shared future. Slowly, she began to see him, not as an outsider helping out of kindness, but as someone who belonged in their lives. It was during one of their Saturday outings, this time to a small lakeside picnic spot, that Daniel's thoughts began to crystallize. He had spent months falling in love with the way Lily's eyes lit up when she learned something new, the way Rachel's guard softened when she laughed. He realized he didn't just want to be a visitor in their lives, he wanted to be part of their family. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Daniel and Rachel sat on the couch in the quiet of the apartment. Rachel, he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. These past months, with you and Lily have changed my life. I thought I was done building a future when Emily died. But you've shown me there's more to live for. Rachel's breath caught. She had felt this shift too, but hearing him put it into words made it real. I don't want to just be a friend who stops by, Daniel continued. I want to be here, with you, every day. I want to support you in finishing school, to help Lily chase every dream she has, to face whatever comes next together. Her eyes were already shining with unshed tears when he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Rachel Carter, will you marry me? For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, yes. Her voice breaking, and Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger. But he wasn't finished. There's one more thing, he said, his tone turning even more tender. I want to adopt Lily. I want her to have my name, my protection, and the absolute certainty that I will be her father for the rest of her life. Rachel pressed a hand to her mouth. She knew how deeply Daniel already loved Lily, but hearing him say those words made her heart swell. She will be overjoyed, Rachel said, finally, smiling through her tears. And she was right. When they told Lily the next morning, she squealed so loudly the upstairs neighbor knocked on the floor. She threw herself into Daniel's arms. You're really going to be my dad, forever. Forever, he promised. Even when you're grown and have a family of your own, I'll still be your dad. From that day forward, the 3 of them moved through life with a new sense of unity. They started planning their wedding. A simple ceremony in the park, where Daniel and Lily had first met, and working through the legal steps for adoption. In the meantime, they continued their routines, homework at the kitchen table, family outings, quiet evenings where Lily read aloud, while Daniel and Rachel cooked. For Daniel, each day confirmed what he already knew. He hadn't just fallen in love with Rachel, but with the life they were building together. And for Rachel, the change was just as profound. For the first time since Lily was born, she felt like she wasn't carrying the weight of the world alone. By the time the adoption papers were ready to sign, they were no longer 3 individuals, connected by chance. They were a family, forged by choice, strengthened by love, and ready to face the future together. The lonely man on the bench was gone, replaced by a husband, a father, and a man whose life had been given back to him by a little girl's simple request. Can I sit here? The day of the wedding dawned with a soft golden light filtering through the trees of Brookside Park, the very place where it had all begun. Months of planning had led to this moment, but it was never about extravagance or spectacle. Daniel Whitmore and Rachel Carter wanted something simple, intimate, and deeply personal. This was not just the joining of 2 adults, but the official creation of a family. Rows of white folding chairs lined the grassy clearing where Daniel had first met Lily. Friends, a few close relatives, and neighbors from Rachel's apartment building gathered with warm smiles and quiet anticipation. There was no towering floral arch or grand orchestra, just a small trellis draped in soft greenery and wildflowers. Chosen because they reminded Lily of the little bouquets she used to pick for her mother. Daniel stood at the front, dressed in a tailored navy suit, his hands clasped to keep from fidgeting. He wasn't nervous in the way grooms usually were. He was steady, certain, but his chest ached with emotion. When Rachel appeared at the edge of the path, wearing a simple ivory dress and holding Lily's hand, his throat tightened. This was the moment his life had been moving toward since that first afternoon on the park bench. The ceremony was as heartfelt as it was brief. The officiant spoke about the power of unexpected connections, how life has a way of weaving people together when they need each Othermost, Daniel's vows were quiet but unshakable, promising to stand by Rachel in every trial and every joy, and to love Lily as his own daughter until his last breath. Rachel's voice trembled as she spoke of the man who had turned her world from survival into hope, and who had shown her that love didn't have to be rushed, it could grow slowly, deeply, and lastingly. When the officiant invited Lily to step forward, she beamed, holding a small piece of paper with her own vows. "I promise," she read carefully, "to always share my snacks with you, to let you read me bedtime stories even when I'm old enough to read them myself, and to call you Daddy Daniel. Or just Dad. Forever." There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Daniel knelt to meet her gaze, his voice breaking as he said, "Then I promise to always be your dad, no matter what. You are my daughter in every way that matters." With those words, the adoption papers, signed earlier that week, took on their fullest meaning. From that day forward, she was officially Lily Whitmore. The reception took place right there in the park, under a canopy strung with fairy lights. Friends brought home-cooked dishes, children played tag between the trees, and laughter floated through the warm evening air. Daniel danced with Rachel under the fading sunlight, then with Lily, who stood on his polished shoes so she could keep up with his steps. In the days that followed, their new life began to take shape. They moved into a modest but cozy house just a short walk from the park. The walls quickly filled with photographs, the wedding, their trips to the zoo, quiet Sunday breakfasts. Daniel set up a corner of the living room as a study space for Lily, complete with shelves for her growing collection of books and art supplies. Rachel, now in the final semester of her nursing program, found comfort in knowing she could come home to a place that felt safe, warm, and full of love. Every morning, Daniel packed Lily's lunch and walked her to school. Every evening, the three of them ate together, trading stories about their day. On weekends, they kept their tradition of family outings, whether it was visiting the museum, hiking a nearby trail, or simply enjoying ice cream on the park bench where everything had started. For Daniel, the transformation was still something he marveled at. Not long ago, he had been a man drifting in grief, sitting alone on a park bench, with no reason to look forward. Now, he woke each day with purpose. Rachel had brought light back into his life. And Lily had taught him that family wasn't only about blood, it was about love, trust, and the choice to be there, day after day. For Rachel, the change was just as profound. The years of shouldering every responsibility alone had left her cautious, but Daniel's consistency had replaced that caution with trust. She no longer faced the world as a single mother fighting to stay afloat. She was a wife, a partner, and part of a team. And for Lily, the girl who once walked home alone with tired feet, the difference was life changing. She now had two parents who adored her, a home that echoed with laughter, and a future she could step into with confidence. She had a father who came to every school event, helped with every science project, and never missed a bedtime story. On quiet evenings, they sometimes returned to Brookside Park, sitting on the same bench where it all began. Daniel would glance at the two people beside him and think about how easily they might never have met. But they had, and because of that, a lonely man, a determined woman, and a little girl had found the one thing they had each been missing. A family. Their family. Forever. A year after that sunlit wedding in Brookside Park, the Whitmore home was filled with a new kind of music, the soft cries and laughter of newborn twins. On a crisp spring morning, Rachel gave birth to Thomas James and Catherine Rose, named to honor both family history and the love that had brought them together. Daniel held each tiny bundle in his arms with a reverence that came from knowing just how rare and precious this moment was. Not long ago, he had believed fatherhood was something he would never experience. Now, he stood in a hospital room surrounded by the three people who had already changed his life, and two more who would change it forever. Lily, now officially Lily Whitmore for almost a year, took her new role as big sister with fierce pride. The first time she saw the twins, her eyes went wide, and her smile nearly split her face. "They're so small," she whispered, as though speaking too loudly might break the spell. From that day forward, she insisted on helping with everything, from fetching diapers to reading bedtime stories in a sing-song voice that made Thomas coo and Catherine kick her tiny legs. She would tell anyone who asked that she had two little shadows who followed her around, and she loved every second of it. The Whitmore household adapted quickly to its new rhythm. Mornings were a gentle chaos of feeding bottles, packing Lily's school lunch, and making sure Rachel had a moment to breathe before heading to her final nursing classes. Daniel, ever the steady anchor, took pride in being hands-on with the twins. He had learned to swaddle like a pro, could change a diaper in record time, and had even perfected the art of holding both babies while still managing to answer a business call, much to the amusement of his colleagues. Rachel, meanwhile, pushed through the last stretch of her nursing program with a determination that impressed everyone around her. The nights were short, the days long, but she was fueled by the knowledge that she was working toward her dream career. Daniel made sure she never felt alone in the struggle, stepping in to handle household duties, booking babysitters when she needed study time, and reminding her constantly that her goals mattered as much as his. When Rachel finally walked across the stage at her nursing school graduation, the entire Whitmore family was there, Daniel holding the twins in each arm, and Lily proudly clutching a bouquet of roses for her mother. As Rachel accepted her diploma, she caught Daniel's eye in the crowd, and in that moment, they both knew this was the life they had fought for, the one they had built with patience, love, and trust. Her first day at the hospital was a mixture of nerves and pride. Wearing her crisp white uniform, Rachel kissed each child goodbye before heading out the door. Lily waved from the porch, the twins gurgled in Daniel's arms, and Rachel walked to her car knowing she was stepping into the future she had once thought unreachable. That night, she came home to find dinner on the table, the babies freshly bathed, and Lily excitedly telling her all about a new school project. It was the kind of ordinary evening that felt extraordinary when she thought back to the years she'd spent juggling 2 jobs. Exhausted and uncertain if life would ever get easier. As the months passed, their home grew warmer, not just in temperature, but in spirit. Family game nights became a tradition, with Lily inventing rules that made everyone laugh. Sundays were reserved for slow mornings, pancakes, and stroller walks through the park. Daniel had discovered that pushing a double stroller while holding Lily's hand was one of life's simple joys. Neighbors often stopped to comment on how happy they all looked together, unaware of the winding path that had led them there. There were challenges, of course. Sleepless nights with teething babies, the juggling act of work and parenting, and the occasional chaos of spilled bottles and missed school buses. But for Daniel and Rachel, those moments were just part of the fabric of a full, rich life. They knew how fragile happiness could be, and they guarded it fiercely. One quiet evening, after the children were asleep, Daniel and Rachel sat together on the croissante couch, the house wrapped in a rare silence. Daniel looked at her with a softness that hadn't dimmed since the day they met. "You know," he said, "I used to think the best years of my life were behind me. But now, I think they're all ahead." Rachel smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "That's because we get to live them together." In that moment, they understood that their family, forged through chance, choice, and an ever-won, unshakable love, was the greatest gift either of them had ever received. And as they drifted off to sleep, the soft breaths of their children filling the house, the Whitmores knew one thing for certain: their life wasn't perfect, but it was perfectly theirs. Love, as the Whitmores learned, is not bound by blood, it is defined by the choices we make and the promises we keep. Daniel did not become a father to Lily because they share DNA. He became her father because, day after day, he chose to show up. He chose to pack her lunch, help with her homework, listen to her stories, and hold her hand when life felt uncertain. Rachel didn't just marry Daniel, she welcomed him into the sacred bond she had built with her daughter, trusting him to guard it as fiercely as she did. Their family was not born out of perfection, but out of a series of small, brave moments. It began with a simple question from a tired little girl on a park bench, and grew into a lifetime of shared laughter, late-night feedings, and unwavering support. They faced challenges, exhaustion, juggling careers, the everyday storms of parenthood, but they met them together, with patience and sacrifice. Through it all, they proved that a true family is not measured by who you share a name with at birth, but by who stands beside you when life gets hard. One small act of courage, a child asking to share a seat, a man daring to open his heart, again, changed all 3 of their lives forever. And in the quiet moments, when the house is filled with the sound of children's laughter, they know they didn't just find love. They built it. Sometimes, the family we're meant to have is the one we choose. True love isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up, over and over, especially when it's not easy. The people who become your family are the ones who choose to stay. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear about the families you've built through choice, not just blood. And don't forget to like and subscribe so we can bring you more stories that remind us of the extraordinary power of love.